Hi, this is Chris Hui from Super Jump Games. Let's start the UEFN workshop for the GDD at Berkeley Bear Jams. Um, this is meant to be kind of a primer for first time UEFN developers, so I'm going to try to go pretty quick but still hit a lot of the small gotchas of getting started. So, first off, we're going to be assuming that you have Fortnite installed and that you also have UEFN installed, which should look something like this in your Epic Games Store client. It'll look like this. Um, so, assuming you got that going, what we're going to look at first is actually the Fortnite Creator Portal. Um, and in order to install UEFN, I'm pretty sure that you'll have to have had registered your Epic Games account to have access to this. But what we're gonna do is assume that most Game Jam teams are actually going to be teams. So let's start there because this is maybe not the most straightforward thing. So let's just pretend that I don't have a team, and you'll probably just see this. So let's go and create a team. Let's I don't know, GDD team test. All that stuff is pretty much whatever, and let's create a team. Cool. So now you see that we have a team here. You'll see it in your UEFN team browser. And from that point, you can start inviting your team members via their Epic display name. Once you do that, here, I'll just do a test one. That's my other user. So you'll get this. This does not go automatically. You need to actually copy this to your clipboard and send it to your team member. So this is very important. Um, don't worry if you don't grab it right now. Like this link is pretty much static, but each person on your team needs to actually be given this link manually, and they need to accept it and go through the whole process. Um, the one gotcha that could happen is do this early. Don't do it like on the day of the game jam if you haven't done it before, because I believe it'll require you to verify the identity of the account, which it's done by like a third party service, but it does require like, hey, like give your like last four of your social security or provide some other identity verification, which can be complicated to do when you're in a rush. So do it early, get your team set up, um, and you won't have any stress. Okay, let's get to the more fun stuff. Go back to Epic Games Store. Let's pretend that I don't have this running. I would have clicked Unreal Editor for Fortnite, and when you pop it open, you'll get a project browser or something like this. Here, I'm just in the island templates. That's probably the best place to start. If you're doing a little bit of tutorials, just to like learn what the engine can do before the jam, definitely check out some of the feature examples. Those can be useful. And then join our Discord. I'll also be sharing some links and tutorials from the UEFN documentation, just to make things a little easy. They're basically the same links that we give our team when we're onboarding somebody new to the UEFN platform. We generally put developers through a couple of tutorials that just give them more or less the fundamentals that you need to really get started. But let's get over here. Let's just pick a blank project template. Now, the thing to pay attention to here before you rush ahead and and hit create. Team selection. Make sure that you select the team that you just created. In this case, I'm calling it GDD team test, and this is important. Enable Unreal revision control, because without this, you won't be able to collaborate or really push changes into a kind of central repository for your team to receive. So, without this, there's really not much collaboration happening. So I'll just create a test one. We'll call this, I don't know, Bear Jam tutorial. And we'll create it. I have my UEFN on my other monitors. Give me a second while that's loading. I can't change I can't change the screen until after a project is open. But nothing interesting is happening. It's just creating the project and opening it, which I'm sure a lot of you will find. UEFN does have a bit of a loading time. It's basically just running Unreal Engine 5. So whatever loading you typically would expect from Unreal Engine 5, you can expect the same thing here, plus a little bit of extra to communicate with the Fortnite servers. Okay, now that we're in, let's take a look at some basic things. Probably one of the better places to start is island settings. At this point, you probably have haggled out what kind of game. Let's say, you're making a 4-player game, or and it's going to be free for all. And you want this to basically be an endless game, so you just want the most amount of rounds possible. And these are the kinds of things that you want to look at the island settings for. Is your game rules, right? So pretty simple, straightforward, but there's a lot of settings in here, so this is probably where you want to start, just to have your game rules. And when you start testing, not be confused about, why are we not on the same team? Where are the teams? How is the round structured, etc. Some important things to enable for development ease that we tend to just throw on. If you look for the locomotion section, screw it, I'm just going to do it through the through the search. We tend to turn on player flight, and this is basically a debug setting that lets you double tap spacebar and fly around your level while the game is actually in play mode. This is super useful when you're still doing level design, you're still figuring out the layout of your map, you're still figuring out game rules. Having all the players be able to fly around and easily get from one spot to another, bypass areas of the map that you haven't designed yet, etc., is really, really useful. So just be aware that this is a thing, this is an option to you. On our teams, we usually just have this enabled all the way up until it's time to start actually playtesting the game and making sure that it's fun. So that's a pretty important one. And you'll see stuff, there's settings, all kinds of settings in here. Respawn, how scoring works, if there is scoring. If you have proximity chat enabled, that's a new feature where just being near each other, you can hear each other's voice chat. Depending on what your game mechanics are, you can get pretty creative with that, maybe. I haven't seen a lot of games do it, but that's what game jams are for. Get wacky. Okay, cool. So not going to get too deep into these things. I just wanted to point out a really, that really useful debug thing, and that you should be probably looking at this early on and starting to figure out what your game rules are. Let's get to so I changed something. I'm going to save it just so we can look at what it looks like to collaborate. So once you have a change, you'll see this down in the bottom right corner turn into a check-in changes icon. So from here, you can commit those changes. So this is basically it's basically like version control, but it's built into UEFN. It's not very robust. For those of you who are coming from an engineering background, don't get excited. It's very finicky, but it's functional and you can collaborate well. So let's just say change some island settings, and we're going to submit that. And this is basically the same as checking in a change list in Perforce. It's probably the closest analog for engineers out there. But yeah, so now that's gone up to the central repository, and now all of your teammates that are also like, let's say they have the project open right now. After a couple of minutes, they'll see, or after a couple of minutes, and maybe after the next save, they'll see that this icon in the bottom right will also change for them to sync the latest changes, right? So that's pretty much the high level of how you're gonna push your changes, push new assets, push new level design out to your teammates. Is that what I just did right there? Cool. So I think those are the simple workflow basics of like, how are you going to collaborate with each other? How are you going to get onto a team? How to create a project for the first time? And what's the most basic stuff to look at that define what your game is going to do in the island settings. So that's, the first baby steps at this point. We could hit launch session. It'll probably let us run around. I'm not going to hit it because launching a session takes a little while. I'll just be honest, guys. So we tend to be a little judicious about when we do it. But what I'm going to do now is, first I'm going to hide my little avatar thing there, and talk about Fortnite assets, which is very important, especially for Game Jam, to not be focused on authoring assets and just all the art side of things right off the bat. You can just start using Fortnite. All of Fortnite assets are basically available to you, which is huge for a Game Jam. So let's just do something silly, and I don't know, we'll just pull in a prefab. And a prefab is basically just a pre-designed building that it probably already exists, in like the Fortnite Battle Royale map. Let's just go to Mega City because I like the hot drop there. These buildings tend to be a little huge, but I don't care. Here, we'll just drag this in. Give that a sec to think about its life, and it should come in. I should have probably picked a smaller prefab. That's my bad. There we go. So, but this is probably a good example of like how powerful UEFN can be. I'll just zoom out a little bit. And so you can see, if we go over here and look at the outliner, that brought in this top level prefab that's Mega City Building A, and tons of individual props that have been pre-constructed into this building. That I'm actually not sure if this does look familiar to me. I don't play that much Fortnite enough to know every prefab. But anyway, Mega City. I'm sure this existed at some point. So yeah, that's it. That's how easy it is to get a fully formed, functional building that's been laid out. This can be a good way to, just quickly fill up a space, get a sense of scale, and I want to put some high buildings here. I want to put some skyscrapers there, and just quickly get a level design. You can see how fast that was, and you just start dragging and dropping. You'll have to pay attention to memory. That is a thing, but aside from that, that's the simple workflow. Now, to get individual props, just go to the props folder here. I'll do it in the bigger view here. We were just in prefabs, but if you just go one over to props, now you can start looking for individual, like, oh, I want, just give me every kind of floor, and let's start looking at stuff. Let's say I want a bunch of wood floors. You can start doing that. If you're working in UEFN, probably a good idea to turn on the tiling. Largely, for anything that's a Fortnite asset, it kind of ignores the snap sizes, and it just snaps to the Fortnite grid. Anything that's a building part. So you'll see all these floors. I'm just hitting Control D for duplicate. You can see how quickly we can just kind of like fill up a floor, and you can build up your own buildings this way, to not have to use the prefabs, define your own spaces. Pretty simple, right? So you can extrapolate this, pretty far for 3D artists. You're basically just kit bashing is what this is. But you have a whole library. Almost every asset in Fortnite is available to you. There's going to be some missing, like there's 5% missing, but mostly everything that you've seen in Fortnite Battle Royale, you can find it somewhere in the Fortnite asset library down here. Okay, cool. So that's like, I don't know, we'll just call that. I'm just kind of mindlessly building a room so you can kind of see workflow and building a space, right? So cool, we have a room, whatever. That's props, that's prefabs. Let's just drop something in it so it doesn't look so empty, and we'll just say it's like the largest, most useless bedroom ever. Cool. Now the more exciting stuff and how you're going to actually make unique gameplay is everything in this folder. The devices folder is all the special sauce of UEFN. And, largely a lot of this stuff also existed in Fortnite Creative 1.0. I'm doing air quotes with my fingers. You can't see me. But, Fortnite, a lot of this stuff existed for sure in Fortnite Creative 1.0, but in UEFN, it is presented this way, and there are some things that have definitely been released somewhat exclusive or post-UEFN. Cool. So, you'll see a lot of stuff. I'm going to focus on a couple of important things for people that they're definitely going to want to know about, and are general and will just be things that you're just going to need them. So I'll just throw them out there. Triggers. Triggers, you can see here, are exactly what they sound like. If a player steps on it, you can set these up so that if a player actually steps on the device, it triggers something. But more often than not, you'll probably turn off the visibility so that nothing, players can't even see this thing, and probably use this in code or in a chain of devices. So let's just throw out a stupid example. Let's say you have a timer, and every 60 seconds you want it to do something. do something every 60 is what I'm going to call this. Blah, blah, blah. Interact time. Let's say, player shouldn't be able to interact with it. And, on completion, where's on completion? Blah, blah, blah. There we go. Completion behavior restart. So this is just an endless thing. Every 60 seconds, we want this timer to let's see, to trigger actually I might have done that backwards. Yeah, I did that backwards. My bad. This is a thing that you'll, as you're learning, try it both ways, right? If like intuitively you think, oh, the timer should be triggering the trigger. A lot of times in UEFN it'll be backwards, where it's like, no, the trigger should be listening to the timer. So in that case, I believe that's what we want, where, hey, this thing is listening to the timer, and on, we'll call it on success, it will trigger this device, and then similar to what I was doing earlier, you can just have, I don't know, I'll just throw a switch here. Switches are also useful. They're basically a codeless way to store state. So in this case, let's just assume that this is all just logical stuff that we don't want the player to see. That's why, like, by default, I'm an engineer by background, so by default I'm like hiding all the logical bits and not allowing players to see this. But here, let's say we wanted to toggle the state every time this trigger is triggered, right? And that's pretty much it, right? That pretty much did it. So we have this trigger. It's listening to the timer device. Timer device is set to be on a eternal loop of every 60 seconds. It fires off. It completes its countdown and restarts, which means every 60 seconds, this timer, this trigger, which is listening to the timer, will trigger. And this switch, which is waiting for the trigger to trigger, will just keep toggling back and forth. And then you can see how, logically you can just keep stacking and stacking and stacking, where it's like, okay, cool. Now 5 different devices are listening to that switch and waiting to do something else, right? Like, I don't know, let's say you're making a horror game and you want the lights to go on and off every 60 seconds, and the player has to play in darkness for a minute every other minute. So, you can see how you can largely find your way very quickly to any sort of unique game design that you might want to do in a game jam, and very quickly. Is this going to be the most optimal way? Maybe not, but you can get there quickly. You can prototype it. You can test it. If I hit launch session right now, it should just, do everything that I have set up. And yeah, so those are kind of, I'm largely just kind of going stream of consciousness here as I'm doing this, but these are the most common things that we find ourselves using whenever we have a new game mechanic. And it's like, hey, let's just, like, more often than not, it's going to be a trigger, a timer, a switch, and some combination of those things, plus whatever the game mechanic is that we were trying to implement. Cool. And then obviously buttons and conditional buttons are going to be obvious things to go to if you want the player to actually interact with things. And there's going to be a lot. You can Google a lot of this stuff and just look at the UEFN documentation. I'm not going to, like, dive into every device. But I just want to break down like, hey, there's a lot. If it's your first time looking at UEFN or Fortnite Creative, it can be overwhelming. So for those of you that are coming at it from a game designer perspective or a programmer's perspective, these can be really good starting points of just like, look, like all I need is a way to trigger things. I need a way to store the state of whether or not a thing's been triggered, and I need to listen to both of those things so that I can make game design happen. And yeah, so that's why I went over these devices. They're probably the best place to start diving in to prototype your game designs. And anything that's not just out of the box supported in island settings, you're probably going to end up implementing it through these types of devices. And then another pretty important one will either be volume, which lets you define like, hey, within this space, something happens when players come in and out of it, or you end up listening and defining things for a space quite a lot. Cool. Let's see. The other big thing will be Verse, which is the programming language of UEFN. It's a new proprietary language developed by Epic and the Fortnite, or I guess the Unreal Engine team plus the Fortnite team. I don't know, but it's a new language. For engineers, I tend to describe it as kind of like Godot or Godot, however you pronounce it. It's a concurrency-based gameplay scripting language, is how I describe it in the nerdiest terms. It's less like C# or C++ for those coming from object-oriented programming, and it's more functional and concurrency-oriented. So it really does. I think it more resembles something like Godot. So let's. There it is. Sorry, I'm always like, where is the button to actually do some of this? I don't know why, but I always forget where this damn button is. But anyway, I don't really want to get too deep into scripting. Really, this was meant to be a little bit more focused on like, hey, like let's just get you guys started. And a lot of what you'll end up doing in verse scripting tends to be, if you're really working, like if you're building like an RPG and you want like persistence and you want to store stuff, or if you want like custom scoring rules, there's like the verse is very important if you want to get if you want to implement a lot of original and non-standard gameplay for sure. But I would kind of urge people, especially in a game jam setting, if you can do it with just native Fortnite devices, try to do it with native Fortnite devices. They tend to be a little bit more robust. They tend to be a little more stable. And you can really do a lot with a lot of the most popular Fortnite creative maps. They didn't even have the benefit of verse to to make them until within the past year. So you can do a lot with just the devices, and if you're not even familiar with those, dive into those first. Don't jump straight to verse. Verse will just give you more rope to hang yourself with when you could have probably did it with just a trigger and a timer or something simpler that is usually a lot more stable. Yeah, but if you do have questions around verse, and you're like, I'll put some articles, I'll provide some links for good getting started with verse tutorials that'll really introduce you to some concepts pretty quickly. I'll put those out at the same time I'll put it in the video description, but we'll also put it in the Discord, and just so people can have an easy reference. Join the Super Jump Discord. I'll be in there, and so will my team. It'll be variable how quickly we can respond to things, but we will try to be available as people are learning or just have simple questions like, it's my first time using verse. I don't know how is this supposed to be working like this? We'll do our best to kind of give easy answers for things that we already know. Cool. Let's get to a couple of quick gotchas for kind of the art side of things. Big part of my background is I was a VFX artist and a technical artist, as well as being a software developer. So I do tend to spend a lot of time myself doing more of the tech art type stuff. So a very powerful tool to make your game not look kind of one note and standard is that you can do Niagara. You can place Niagara emitters and do custom particle effects. You're not limited to just like what you see in the am I even in the right place? There's like a Fortnite set of here I'll bring it in just so I can show you guys. Device VFX. So there is like a VFX spawner, and you'll see these in tutorials quite a bit, where they have some kind of pre-canned VFX. What's a really obvious, easy one? Sure, fireworks. Fireworks is nice and obvious. Oh god, that's loud. Okay. Cool. So, you can see that there are some easy, if you just want to put something in, these are great. Nothing wrong with them. You can use this system to override and place your own Niagara system if you want to. Let's just create one. We'll just create one here. New Niagara system. Sure. Cool. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. The point is that cool. So now a new Niagara system, and then you can assign that here, and then you can open your Niagara system and start designing whatever the hell you want. For those that have worked in Unreal before, this should look somewhat familiar. But this is, I just like to call this out because personally, I think VFX is a huge part of kind of game feel. So, you're not limited to what Fortnite has for you. If you want to do fancy nuclear explosions, great. If you want to do some more sci-fi-y type stuff, and you don't want to just use confetti and generic fireworks, you can, right? That's a quick little one. Most of what's on Unreal 5 is available in UEFN, with the exception of blueprints, and that'll be the big gotcha for anyone that's coming from Unreal 4 or Unreal 5. If you've done any projects there and you're migrating over to UEFN, that'll be a bit of a gotcha where you can't directly port over a lot of your workflows. but the assets will come over, right? So anything like, custom 3D assets, if you want to do that, you definitely can. If you want to do custom VFX, you can do those. If you want to bring in custom animations, you can do that. You want to bring in custom audio, you can bring in pretty much anything that you can bring into Unreal 5. You just don't get blueprints. Not visual scripting blueprints, I should say. You can still create blueprint classes, and they're and like encapsulate sets of objects, to kind of create a custom composite object, is I guess what I'll call it, or I guess your own prefab, I suppose. But I wouldn't think of it in the same way as an Unreal blueprint, where like you can't really do the advanced sort of visual scripting nodes, and you won't get a lot of that kind of like physics event sort of interactions. But yeah, so I mean that's kind of in a nutshell. I'm really was trying to keep this video, this workshop, to about half an hour. We're a little bit over, but we're just at about half an hour. And I think that's a good kind of getting started. I'll provide links in the description to like dive a little bit deeper for those that are trying to get their feet wet and implement a few things in a tutorial sense. But I think this is a good start for anyone that's trying this out for the first time. I didn't launch a session, but largely, here, let's see how quick this. While I'm running my mouth, if this launches fast enough, then I'll just do a very quick play test and kind of show how that goes. But it does take a little bit, and we'll see how long how long this loading goes. Basically, the more empty your project is, the quicker this goes. So usually early on, like I am right now, it'll be the fastest that it'll ever load, which is still, my guesstimate is this is still probably going to take 5 minutes if I let it run. And I'm on a fairly beefy-ish rig for this recording, so temper your expectations in terms of be smart. I should say be smart about how often you're running a session and testing things that you've put into the map. Like, don't add a chair and update your session or try to test that for something that simple. Try to bundle, if you got a bunch of aesthetic things, cool, put those all in, but then don't launch it until you've put in the next set of like game design or like functional level design, because the iteration times can be a little lengthy. But if you're used to working in another engine like Unity or regular Unreal, it's probably nothing new. It can just be a little extra frustrating because of the Fortnite aspect, because it has to load Fortnite and deploy to a server behind the scenes. And also every time it's technically cooking a build in the Fortnite servers, so you are kind of doing an Unreal 5 build behind the scenes, and that's what you're waiting for. So I click that button, it's loading on my other screen. Here, let's see if I can add a quick game capture for it. I don't think it's working because it's still loading. Okay. Well, anyway, if that loads in the next few seconds, then I'll show you. Then I'll show a very brief version of that. But otherwise, I'm. Oh, there he goes. Okay. So this is the session loading. Again, you know, just because you guys can see it now doesn't mean this screen can last either 5 minutes or 15 minutes. So I'm always a little dubious about waiting for it, but we'll see if it goes. What else is there that might be important that I haven't mentioned yet? Guess a little bit about the event. You know, we are hosting the UEFN portion of the game jam. We will be hosting a few UEFN specific prizes. That is pretty exciting. You know, we'll be putting some Amazon gift cards to the top 3 entries. We have myself for representing Super Jump as one of the judges. We have Notef from Neighbor, who will be our second judge, and then we have Brendan from Chartis, who will be our completing the judging panel. So there will be 3 UEFN creator studio heads doing the judging for the UEFN portion of the game jam, and the top three picks will be getting prizes that are specific to the UEFN. Okay, cool. So now we can kind of see here. Let's take a look. We'll just double tap spacebar. We're in creator mode, so this is always enabled. So you can see, you know, my prefabs there. I got my little bedroom here. Got the devices that I placed, right? So, you know, you can just hit escape. You can start the game. That'll actually run the simulation. So you can see my little 1-minute timer there. You know, you can see that this is a fully functional. Maybe I do recognize this. I feel like I've fought in this building before. But yeah, you can see this is a fully functional Fortnite building. And here, and then the thing that didn't I enable? I thought I enabled player flight. Maybe I turned it off. It's fine. Cool. So you can see the little VFX. Oh, see. I hit it, but I left it enabled. The trigger is still there. And I hid the switch. I probably should have left it on. But it would be toggling right there. Here you can see the little bed thing. Okay, cool. So you see the timer tick down, and you heard the trigger go off, which sounds like that. Cool. So that's a very quick little demo. One other thing, really quick, now that I've said that we're done. Last thing to point out that is like just stupid and important. Item placers, item granters. These are like going to be super obvious. Like, hey, I want to place something in the world for players to pick up. Item placer. Item grantor, I want the player to be able to like hit this button or something and grant them a gun, let's say. Or like when the player enters this area, I want to give them a gun. You know, that's where you do it. Hey, let's give them I don't know, give them a combat pistol, and we'll give them we'll just give them a slurp. whatever it is. But you can define all kinds of things, and let's say you do have something that like requires currency. I tend to think in RPG design. You know, let's say you do want something you do want to have an economy of some kind. You know, you can use gold. You can use, here, I'll just start building them up. You can use diamonds. Basically, all of the Fortnite resources are available to you. There's some like really, you can get really weird. Like there's dino eggs in here. There's all of the ore. Okay, well, it's hard to search for. All the key cards are in here. So let's say you want to have a key card to gate players' access, and you want to build like a puzzle game or some kind of progression level design where the player has to find a key card before they can open a door and keep going. All that stuff is available to you. You can do it through item granters, or you can do it through an item placer, which will be an actual physical model of that item. So here, let's throw one in. I don't know. Let's just call it a key card. Cool. So now in the level, there will just be that key card, and you can configure it however you want so that players can grab it and take it. Okay, cool. That's 45 minutes. I'm going to call it here. I think those are definitely the major basics. There's plenty to dive into, but I think at this point it'll be better off suited for people to dive into tutorials, leading up to the game jam instead. Cool. Yeah, join the Super Jump Discord. There's a link to it in the Bear Jams and the GDD Discords. I know that we've already seen some people joining. So everyone who's in, welcome. But yeah, come by and ask questions. We're around. Yeah, we're around. And once the game jam gets going, we'll try our best to be around. I do think that the game jam runs on a weekend, so our hours are definitely less standard. We are kind of sort of on the 9 to 5 because people aren't usually working on the weekend, but I'm chronically online, so chances are if you got some burning questions and I know the answer, I'll be around to say something. Cool. Thanks. Hope this is helpful. If you got questions, come by the Discord. All right. Thanks.